Hi guys, I'm Andrew and I'm here with GeIL, M-Wave's tech expert in system building. Today GeIL is going to show us how to build the latest gaming PC with the latest Intel's Broadwell-E CPU. Also including in that build, we're going to include the Intel 750 SSD, which is their fastest SSD for gaming, which is like super fast. So what we have here are all the parts that GeIL picked for the build. You can also buy this DIY kit yourself online and build it yourself after watching our how to build video. And we also have other kits, probably a lower price, so more budgety, and maybe don't include the GPU, and then you can pick a GPU that you like to put in there. So okay, are you ready, Joe, to show these guys how to build the best gaming PC?
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's go.
Okay, so the first stage will be to install the CPU into the motherboard socket. The CPU that we have here today is the Broadwell 6800K. It's a 6-core processor. So the first thing that you'll need to do is loosen the mounting retention mechanism. It is all labeled if you are looking closely. You'll start by releasing the first arm, and then this will allow you to release the second arm, which will then release the latch itself. From here, we'll be lining up the golden triangle with the triangle on the mounting bracket. Once you remove this, it's a good opportunity to check for bent pins. So there are notches. Remember the golden triangle that I mentioned before? Be very slow, don't drop it from a height. Use one side to line it up and slowly drop it down. You don't have to put any force on it at all. You can give it a bit of a touch to make sure it's clearly in the socket. Because the last thing you want to do is it not to be sitting flush and put pressure down. I'll bend pins for sure. Put the latch down in the reverse order of the time that you loosened up the bracket. And that's how you install a CPU into a motherboard. The next step is installing the RAM. You need to release the RAM clips. Consult the motherboard manual for the memory configuration. We're using GeIL Super LUCE in a quad channel configuration for this build. You'll notice in the slots that one side is shorter than the other. You can use this to line it up. Apply even pressure on both sides. And then you'll hear a click, and you'll notice that the tab that you released earlier will come back into alignment. Now just rinse and repeat this process for the remaining DIMMs. A good tip is, a lot of RAMs, they'll have labels or markings of the branding, so you already know what the alignment is. Just know in X99 boards, it'll be a mirror image of that. So you notice that the label is facing this way, so on the other side, it should be this way. That's it. That's how you install CPU and RAM. Okay guys, we're on to the next step. That's installing the power supply into the case. This is an accessory from the motherboard from last time. This is what they call the I/O shield, and it'll be installed into the rear of the case. Okay, so these are the cables that you need. There are other cables that come with your power supply. The reason being is if you would like to upgrade it with more graphics cards or more hard drives in the future, there's enough power and power cables to do this. Okay, so let's start by installing this. So the first thing you want to do is remove or loosen any thumb screws or screws from the case. Make sure any screws that you remove, you keep track of where they are because you'll need to put them back on. Okay, so this is what the back of the X31 RGB Thermaltake case looks like. And this is the main working area. The first thing that you want to do is locate all the accessories. So these are all the screws that you'll need to mount all the hardware that we have. And also it looks like a fan controller, which is unique for this case. Okay, so in this case, there's a shroud here. This covers the power supply that we'll be installing. So we'll have to remove this so we can access this area. See, it's loose. Lift up slightly and away. Okay. So this is the main area where you'll be installing the power supply. It is secured with 4 screws. Actually, it's best to remove all the cabling that will get in the way first. With this power supply, being a modular power supply, we'll be installing a single graphics card that requires 2 6 or 8 pin heads. So for this particular power supply, it just needs 1 PCI-Express cable. It's completely labeled on the power supply, and also it's color coded and it only fits in the correct slot. Now this is for the hard drive, the SATA power. Similar to the red cable, but this one's black and it's labeled peripheral connectors. Okay, once you have the cabling that you need, okay, so install the power supply. You remember this from before, that's where you'll find the screws to mount it to the case. Or not. Okay. So you'll need 4 M3 hex head screws. So they'll have a hexagonal Phillips head on one side, and the tread is M3, so it's bigger than what you would expect to use for an optical device. You need 4 identical screws to mount the power supply to the case. Once you have your 4 screws, it's pretty simple. you're at it, install the I/O shield. The easy way to tell which way it should go in the case is the sound outs, or the 6 circles, or in this case, because it has optical out, the square and 5 circles should be closest to you, or closest towards where you installed the power supply. And when installed, it should sit flush into this recessed area here. Since you removed the accessories, you can also now add in the hard drive. And as simple as sliding it back in. And there you have it. Power supply in case, power supply in your case, a hard drive in your case, and the I/O shield. The next step that we'll be looking at is installing the motherboard and other devices. Okay, so the next step after we have installed the hard drive, the power supply, and the I/O shield, we'll be installing the motherboard in this area. But to be able to do that properly, we should do a little bit of cable management. So what I'll be doing is routing this fan cable and this graphics card power cable through the grommets to the back. You'll see it come out the back side. So first I'll start with the fan cable. There's a cutout here. You can see the cable come through. I do not want it to overlap the I/O shield because the motherboard ports will be going through that. The next thing is the graphics card power cable. I'll be using the bottom grommet just to keep cabling neat. Again, making sure that there's not too many overlaps. Just to reduce cable bulk. And that's it. We're ready to install the motherboard. Okay, so now we'll be installing the motherboard into the case. There are 9 standoffs. In some cases, they are not pre-installed. In this case, we are lucky, they are pre-installed, and they're in the correct mounting places. You can refer to your case's manual if you're unsure. Don't worry about all the excess cables that you see. We'll be doing cabling at the end. So grab your motherboard. Make sure you do not scrub it against any kind of metal that could damage the board. This is the I/O ports that you want to line up with the I/O shield, and you also want to line up any of the screw holes. You can see that the orientation is just like that. You see that the I/O shield is at the top. I want to start by angling it and get the sound and Wi-Fi ports through that I/O shield. I'm not putting any downward pressure on it at all, so I don't want to scratch against the standoffs. I'm pushing it now towards the I/O shield. And I'm just seeing whether or not the standoffs do in fact line up, or if there's any cables lifting up against the standoffs. I can see that once I mount the screws, it'll be mounted correctly. So no pressure at all. Do not use an electric screwdriver for this part. Another good tip is get one of the standoffs that comes in the screw accessories, and just check if the tread of the screw that you're about to use actually fits. You can screw it in slightly and it feels really easy to get it in, and it's tight, it's not loose when it comes out, then you know you got the right screw. Each case has different screws that it uses for its standoffs. So again, using the side of the PCB, put slight pressure only towards the I/O shield. Don't put it down towards the case at all. You just want to line one of the middle ones up. better. Okay, as easy as that. The motherboard is now mounted securely to the case. No risk of it coming out. Okay, now that we have the motherboard installed and the power supply installed, we're going to be doing some basic cable management. This will entail plugging the 24-pin power, 8-pin power, and the front I/O cables, which will be powering the USB devices and front audio devices. The best place to consult if you don't know what these devices or reciprocals look like or are, you should look at the motherboard's manual. Okay. Okay, so that's the CPU power or 8-pin. The graphics card power. So I'm just going to go over the cables that are basically cable managed. So this is the 8-pin power cable. It supplies power to the CPU and VRM. This is the 24-pin, which supplies power to the PCI lanes and the rest of the motherboard. This is the USB 3.0 cable, which powers the top or front panel USB 3 ports. This is a SATA cable. The other end of it's attached to our hard drive. This is the I/O or front I/O panel. So this will be powering the power button, reset button, and front hard drive indicators. The one just next to it is for the front USB 2.0 ports, and this one down here is for the front panel HD audio. And this is the sound card just here. Next step is to work out how does the CPU block mount on to the socket or the motherboard that you have. Okay, so for this motherboard and socket, again we're using the new Intel Broadwell-E. It's on an X99 socket. So there should be a manual, so something like this, that you can consult with how to mount your aftermarket cooler to your motherboard. So after gaining an understanding of that, I'll know exactly what pieces I need and what pieces I do not need. Okay, so these are all the pieces I don't need. But these are the ones I do. So we're going to start by assembling the mounting plate. Or should I say mounting retention plate. Again, if you're unsure, just consult the manual that comes with the aftermarket cooler. It'll tell you step by step how to do it. And this will be the retention mounting to hold the CPU blockhead down. The other thing you need to consider is what fan configuration you'd like your computer to be in. So fan configuration generally means where you want your airflow to go. So in this case, this being the top side of the case, we want it to exhaust out. So we want to basically have the fans facing, or the frame of the fans facing the top. Then the second decision is, do you want it to be pulling air through the radiator or pushing it? In regards to performance, there's not a lot of difference. In regards to maintenance, there could be. If you do have it in pull configuration, you can be wiping the dust out rather easily. A lot of people like to do push though. The dust will gather in between the fans, but it does look a little bit better to most people. You won't have to worry about applying thermal paste to the CPU block itself. It's pre-done in this all-in-one cooler. So the first stage is mounting the radiator to the case, so we don't have to deal with the extra weight. You'd also want to decide which way do you want the tubing to run. So in this instance, I would like it to go here. In this case, you've got plenty of working room. So I'm going to rotate the side that I need to screw closest to me. Okay, so there are plenty of screw holes on this case. You can choose exactly where you would like to mount your radiator. It'll be a similar gauge screw to your power supply. Again, for this one, I wouldn't recommend using an electric screwdriver because you're at risk of then threading the radiator and then you cannot mount it. That seems about right. Make sure that you've got enough length as well. Seems like we do. And then proceed to mount the radiator to the top of the case. make sure not to over tighten the screws as well. But yeah, essentially the radiator component of the all-in-one will not be going anywhere. Now we'll grab the bracket that we had before. Again, make sure that the mounting actually lines up. Okay. Work out exactly where you want the logo or how much tubing that you have. So you see if I put it up here, it's putting a bit of stress on the tubing. So then I'll rotate it a bit closer, just like that. You can twist this to the left or right. It'll come off. Put the mounting plate on, twist it, and the little hook in. And then just rotate it until you have it where you want it. Okay, note once the cover's off to be very careful as the thermal paste is now exposed. Again, I don't recommend using an electric screwdriver for this part, as you don't want to shear the mounting. Just a couple turns to begin with. Okay, now you want to tighten by opposites. This ensures that block is not bowing onto the CPU. There we go, touch tight is enough. Okay. And now you want to plug in, this is the power for the water pump. I'll show you up here. This is the power cable that powers the water pump that's in here. That spins all the water and liquid. If this isn't plugged in, the liquid cooler is as good as gone. So you can plug that into a fan header, but in the ASUS STRIX board, if you consult the motherboard manual, it's labeled as well. It says water pump header. Okay, so where my finger is, it says W pump header. Install the CPU cooler power cable into that header. Okay. Once that cable is plugged in, do basic cable management. And that's it. That's how you install the main part of an all-in-one. The only remaining thing is after installing your washers onto your fan screws. So remember, airflow is on the frame side and we want it to go out the top. we'll be mounting our fans with the cable closest to the rear of the PC case. So it would be somewhat in this manner with 4 screws, and we would repeat the process for all 3 fans. I'm just going to do it quickly. After installing the 3 fans into the radiator, we'll have to get to the back of the case and do all the cabling and hook it up to the fan controller, so you can control the lighting effects and the speed of the fans. Okay, so these are the fan cables. This is the fan control block. Okay, it's as easy as that. We want to reroute, so now we have 2 controllers. We would like to route these through to the CPU fan header, or multiple CPU fan headers, which will be at the top of the case on the motherboard side. You cannot see in the top rear of the case where all the CPU fan headers to power these fans, and also the water pump header to power the water pump inside the all-in-one cooler are located. It's labeled, and again, if you're unsure, refer to the motherboard manual or the cooler manual, or both. Okay, from here, it's just a matter of doing proper cable management. So essentially, most things are done. We just need to install the Intel 750 NVMe SSD. And that'll be going into the third PCI-Express slot. And then a graphics card into the top slot. Okay, you can use an electric screwdriver for this part. So I want to remove the third slot first. Maybe you cannot use an electric screwdriver for this part because you require more torque. Okay, so it's just a thumb screw. Okay, reinstall the thumb screw with a screwdriver. Then remove the corresponding PCI plates. So a graphics card, a dual slot graphics card can fit in. Okay, previously we pre-routed the PCI power cable, which is used for most gaming graphics cards. Make sure that when you install the card, that it won't encumber that cable, because you'll need to route it and plug it into the graphics card. Make sure to reinstall the slot. Then plug in the power cable. In this particular graphics card, we'll have to use two 8-pin powers. Okay, so that's your graphics card and Intel 750 NVMe SSD installed. From here, You just have to put the screws that you took off earlier, and mount that, shroud back on over the power supply.
Okay, so this is the final build that we got here with the new Intel Broadwell-E CPU with the 6800K CPU, right?
Yep, the 6 core.
Yep, and also the Intel 750 SSD.
NVMe SSD.
Yep, NVMe, and as you can see, we got some LED lights happening here. And this actual kit is being sold online as well, which you can buy yourself and build exactly what we have here. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to comment below or send us an email. We'll be glad to help you. And see you next time.
See you next time.